Hey, Mr. Chairman, appreciate the comments of Congresswoman Rice on this important issue of veterans being discharged under other than honorable conditions and being denied access to mental health care from the VA. Combat veterans with multiple tours of duty who I think in a very unfair way for particularly the United States Army to conduct a reduction in force through signaling out combat veterans who might have some disciplinary issues, oftentimes we believe related to post-traumatic stress disorder, and that are discharged without any access to VA mental health care is a recipe for problems in and of itself. And so this legislation, and I know many of the members here, Mr. O'Rourke, Mr. Waltz, Mr. Zeldin, and others are co-sponsoring this legislation. But we absolutely need to get that done. I want to thank IAVA for being really a catalyst on this very important issue. Let me just pivot to, I have a real concern that we've had testimony before this committee concerning a drug-centric therapy and a form of treatment, modality of treatment. And in fact, we had testimony of a veteran suicide where I think a former service member was given a cocktail of drugs in response to treatment, and then relocated. The prescriptions ran out, was unable to navigate the bureaucracy of VHA to get those prescriptions refilled, and given the powerful nature of some of those drugs, took his own life. And then I think we've had testimony as well. In fact, I was with Congressman Lamborn in his district in Colorado Springs, where we had testimony from parents of a Marine who had served tours of duty, I think, in Iraq and Afghanistan, had left the service, went to the VA for mental health care. They gave him a very powerful drug that part of the directions on the drug were it required constant monitoring. He was not monitored. He subsequently took his life. And so I just think that this reliance on these very powerful drugs is a shortcut to treatment by the VA, and I think it's costing veteran lives, and I want you to respond to that.
So, you know, I'm not prepared to talk about individual situations,
Sure.
but I'd be happy to talk about our expectation. When we had learned about some of these problems with people moving, we've made it really clear the expectation is that the meds continue, and that any barriers to that be broken down so that the meds would continue. So we appreciate that it having been brought to our attention, and it is certainly our hope and our expectation that that particular problem is not occurring at this time. As far as treatments go, the evidence-based treatments for PTSD in particular include cognitive behavioral therapy, prolonged exposure therapies, all therapies that do not involve medications. And it's really important that the right kinds of treatments are used. As a provider, a psychiatrist who has treated veterans with PTSD, I know that often the despair and the frustration and the impatience that you see when you talk to a veteran leads you to think, I've got to do something. And I think that leads to people at times making choices about meds that they might not otherwise make. Let me try this, let me try that. You know, there is no single pill that's a cure for PTSD.
Well, it becomes a pill to get up in the morning, a pill to go to bed at night, a pill for this and a pill for that.
And that's wrong.
And I think it has a very adverse cumulative effect. Let me also just mention that I think it's been bought, I think this has been raised by this panel, about the vacancies in the VA in terms of mental health providers being hired by VHA. We had a very good roundtable with the leadership of VHA in this room not that long ago. And one thing that was interesting that was raised in that was how difficult it is for somebody who wants a job in the VA to navigate how long it takes to get accepted by the VA and how long it takes to get placed by the VA and how significant the attrition rate is by those who start the process and those who simply can't afford to finish the process. And so it's been raised that it was a function of compensation. I contend that it's part of this bureaucracy that needs to be cleaned up. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.